Welcome to What the F Happened, Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast where we break down what's actually happening across fraud, scams, AML, and financial crime.
Each episode cuts through the noise to explain the tactics, trends, and real-world impact behind the headlines, so you're better prepared for what comes next. Let's get into it. Welcome to today's deep dive. Right now, in a quiet, fluorescent-lit bank branch in your neighborhood, a horrific crime might actually be taking place.
Yeah, and it's a chilling thought because it doesn't look like a crime at all.
Exactly. Like, there are no weapons drawn, there's no screaming, there are no dramatic police sirens wailing in the distance. It's literally just a completely mundane deposit happening at the teller window.
Right. And today, our mission is to completely shatter that cinematic image you probably have of human trafficking.
Right, because we usually picture this fight happening at, like, physical borders, with the specialized task forces raiding shipping containers in the dead of night.
We do. But the most critical battleground in the fight against modern slavery doesn't look like an action movie. It looks like a spreadsheet. I mean, it looks like an algorithm processing data in a massive server farm.
Wow. And, shifting that perspective is basically the only way to truly understand how these illicit networks operate. We're pulling our insights today from a really illuminating source article by Alex from DataVisor.
Which is fantastic, by the way, because it focuses entirely on the financial indicators of human trafficking.
Yeah, it really forces us to look past the humanitarian crisis, as horrific as it is, and view it through a totally different lens.
Exactly. It needs to be analyzed as a highly sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar financial crime. Because stripped of its physical cruelty from a purely operational standpoint, that is exactly what it is.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise here is just fascinating. Human trafficking networks, whether we're talking about sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or forced labor, they literally cannot survive without the legitimate financial system. Like, they need everyday banks just as much as a legitimate tech startup or, I don't know, a neighborhood bakery does.
They absolutely do. And, their reliance on everyday banking is actually their single biggest operational vulnerability.
Really? Their biggest vulnerability?
Oh, for sure. Organizations like FinCEN, that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the Financial Action Task Force, they've explicitly warned that financial institutions are perfectly positioned to spot these crimes.
That makes sense.
The everyday financial plumbing that you use to buy groceries, pay your rent, or split a dinner bill, that's the exact same battleground where these crimes are detected.
I mean, I always kind of assumed criminals wanted to stay entirely outside the system, using cash and briefcases.
Right, Hollywood version.
Yeah, but when you think about the sheer volume of money involved, that just becomes impossible. If a criminal enterprise makes tens of millions of dollars through exploitation, they can't physically manage that much paper.
No, the logistics alone would be a nightmare.
Right. Think about the weight of millions of dollars in $20 bills. You can't just stuff it under a mattress, and you certainly can't use duffel bags of cash to pay overseas facilitators or buy real estate. Yeah. You have to essentially plug your illicit water pipe into the same legitimate financial plumbing the rest of the world uses. If a trafficking ring can't move their money electronically, the entire operation just chokes on its own cash.
That's a great analogy. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, banks and fintech companies aren't just sitting around managing regulatory compliance or, checking arbitrary boxes for the government.
Right. They're doing a lot more than that.
They are. When they tune their systems correctly, they are actively disrupting the infrastructure of modern slavery. They're catching the money movement often before local law enforcement even knows a physical crime has occurred in their jurisdiction.
Wow. So the financial system might unintentionally facilitate trafficking, but it's simultaneously one of the most powerful surveillance tools we have to dismantle it.
Precisely.
So if these traffickers are forced to use the same normal financial channels as the rest of us, how do they hide? Because we're dealing with two very different sides of the ledger here, right?
We are. There's the trafficker trying to hide their profits, and then there's the victim whose financial identity is often just hijacked.
Let's look at the exploiter's playbook first. How does a multi-million-dollar trafficking ring deposit cash without setting off every single alarm in the building?
Well, it comes down to a mathematical game of limbo. It's known as structured deposits or smurfing.
Smurfing, okay.
Yeah, traffickers know the Bank Secrecy Act inside and out. They know that in the U.S., for example, any cash transaction over $10,000 automatically triggers a currency transaction report to the government.
Ah, so they stay under the limit.
Exactly. To avoid that threshold, a trafficker won't deposit $15,000 at once. They'll send 3 different people to 3 different bank branches on a Tuesday morning to deposit $5,000 each.
Wow. So they systematically keep the amounts just under the radar, artificially breaking up the cash to avoid waking up the system.
Right. And according to the DataVisor research, they also use front businesses to commingle the money.
Right, the source mentioned that, like setting up businesses that operate entirely in cash and seem perfectly legitimate on the surface.
Yes. The article mentions certain massage parlors, escort services,
Hmm.
or agricultural labor contractors. A trafficker basically mixes the illicit cash in with the legitimate revenue of the front business.
So when the bank looks at the account, it just looks like a highly profitable, cash-heavy enterprise. That is insidious.
It really is. And beyond the cash deposits, the exploiters rely heavily on rapid cross-border transfers to further muddy the waters.
Moving it internationally to make it harder to trace.
Exactly. They will move funds through incredibly complex flows involving multiple intermediary banks, just bouncing the money across jurisdictions.
And what about crypto? I imagine that plays a role now, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They increasingly route their profits through digital assets like cryptocurrency. The goal there is to use the perceived anonymity of the blockchain to sever the link between the dirty cash and the final clean bank account.
Okay, so that's the trafficker trying to stay invisible. But the victim's reality, their financial footprint, tells a completely different story.
It's heartbreaking, really.
The source material describes it as a trail of coercion. Like, traffickers will actually force victims to open bank accounts in their own names. The article calls it forced criminality.
Yeah, it's a method of profound, invisible control. The victim essentially becomes a mere vessel.
That's horrifying.
The trafficker forces them to open a checking account, takes their debit card, takes their passwords, and uses that clean, seemingly legitimate identity to move money.
Wait, let me push back on that for a second. Wait, so if a victim's account is receiving regular payroll deposits from a labor contractor or regular transfers for services, wouldn't that look perfectly normal to a bank's automated system?
That's a really good point.
Like, how does a computer know the person receiving the direct deposit isn't the one actually spending it?
Well, the deposit itself often does look completely normal. It's the velocity of the money, what happens in the seconds and minutes after the deposit, that reveals the exploitation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the computer isn't just looking at the incoming funds. It's looking at the lifespan of that money in the account. I mean, a normal person gets paid, leaves the money in their account, and slowly pays bills over a month.
Right, buying groceries, paying rent.
Exactly. But a victim's account receives a deposit, and almost instantaneously, that exact amount is withdrawn in cash at an ATM or rapidly wired to a third party that the victim has no obvious relationship with.
So it's the total lack of financial autonomy. The money hits the account and it's just gone.
Precisely that. You might also see erratic financial activities that contradict a steady income.
What do you mean by that?
Like the system might flag an account receiving $4,000 a month in direct deposits, but simultaneously racking up constant overdraft fees
Oh, right.
and making desperate tiny transactions for basic survival necessities late at night. The data paints a picture of someone who is supposedly earning money, but physically has zero access to it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, a bit terrifying. We aren't just talking about abstract numbers floating in a cloud server. We are talking about human interactions at the retail level.
Yes, the human element is huge here.
Because a teller might not see the whole picture, and the bank's automated system might miss the human nuance. How do you actually bridge the gap between a weird deposit and identifying a human rights violation?
Well, the DataVisor article breaks the detection down into 2 distinct categories: digital red flags and behavioral red flags.
Okay, let's start with the digital ones.
The digital side is what the compliance teams and algorithms hunt for. They're trained to look for frequent, inexplicable transfers between totally unrelated individuals.
Right.
They also hunt for the repeated purchase of easily liquidatable assets. We're talking specifically about prepaid cards, gift cards, or money orders.
Which totally explains why a trafficker would buy a massive stack of prepaid Visa cards at a pharmacy. Once you load cash onto an anonymous gift card, it's essentially untraceable ghost money.
Exactly. It's off the grid.
You can hand that card to anyone, anywhere in the country, and they can use it to buy flights or book hotel rooms for the operation.
And those rapid transfers we mentioned earlier are huge digital flags, too. I mean, if an account receives a $2,000 wire, and within 60 seconds, wires $1,980 to an obscure offshore account.
That's a massive red flag.
It's a massive anomaly. Normal consumers simply do not behave that way.
Yeah,
But as you pointed out, the computer doesn't see the human being.
right.
That is where behavioral red flags come in, and those rely entirely on the observation skills of frontline staff.
So this is where the branch manager or the teller essentially has to become a detective.
Yes, what's fascinating here is that behavioral signals provide the human context that raw data fundamentally lacks.
Give me an example of what they'd look for.
Well, a teller might notice a customer who is unusually withdrawn or physically trembling or completely avoiding eye contact.
Wow, just basic human cues.
Exactly. And often, victims are accompanied by a controlling third party who insists on standing right behind them, hovering, and answering all the bank's security questions on their behalf.
And the source notes, they might also give wildly inconsistent information, like a customer might not know their own address.
Or they might recite a phone number that clearly belongs to the person standing next to them.
That's just so sad to picture. But, I mean, it is crucial to stress that no single red flag confirms human trafficking.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very important distinction to make.
Yeah.
Someone buying a stack of gift cards for their employees at the holidays isn't a criminal.
Right, I've done that.
And a customer who just gets nervous talking to bank tellers isn't automatically a victim of modern slavery. The trigger for an investigation is the intersection of these anomalies.
It's the overlap.
Yes, it's a combination of highly unusual financial velocity overlapping with behavioral signs of coercion.
But tellers are only human, and they only see a tiny fraction of the interaction. And traffickers are fully aware of these red flags, right? Like, they know about the $10,000 limit, and they know what makes a teller suspicious.
They're very sophisticated.
So they purposefully dilute their footprint. They use dozens of accounts spread across different banks and different shell companies to ensure that no single account ever crosses the threshold to trigger those static rules.
Right.
If the criminals are deliberately fragmenting their activity to stay under the radar, how does a bank's computer system catch an entire hidden network, rather than just an isolated low-level alert on one account?
Well, this requires a look into the massive technological evolution happening in anti-money laundering right now. Traditional static rules like, flag any transaction over $5,000, they're basically useless against sophisticated syndicates.
Because there's just too much noise.
Exactly. They generate far too many false positives. If you flag every large transfer, you end up investigating legitimate businesses paying overseas vendors.
Which wastes everyone's time.
Right. So to solve this, institutions have transitioned to using artificial intelligence and a technology called link analysis.
The source mentions DataVisor's knowledge graph as a prime example of this. But how does link analysis actually work to solve the false positive problem?
So link analysis maps the hidden connective tissue of the financial system. Investigators and AI don't just look at the name on a checking account anymore.
What are they looking at?
They use graph analytics to map shared underlying data points across millions of daily transactions. They look at device IDs, email addresses, IP addresses, physical addresses. They even look at the biometric way a user types on their phone.
Wait, really? How they type?
Yeah, the cadence of their keystrokes. Imagine 3 bank accounts with completely different names, moving money to completely different places, never interacting with each other.
Okay.
A static rule sees 3 unrelated people. But link analysis sees that all 3 accounts consistently log into their banking apps from the exact same obscure IP address using the exact same mobile device ID at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Okay, wait. So if I'm understanding this, link analysis is basically the modern digital version of a detective's corkboard. You know, the one in every police movie with the push pins and the red string.
That is the perfect analogy.
You're using an AI-powered red string to connect a seemingly innocent login on a victim's account to the IP address of a known criminal on a completely different account.
You are stringing together the digital exhaust these criminals leave behind. When you run that red string across billions of data points using machine learning, massive clusters start to form.
The hidden network reveals itself.
Exactly. The hidden relationships become undeniable. This graph analytics approach reveals what investigators call the central nodes.
Central nodes, like the spider sitting at the center of the web.
Exactly like that. The AI reveals a hidden facilitator account that is secretly receiving thousands of microdeposits from dozens of different victim sources, pooling that money, and then redistributing it.
Man, without link analysis, those dozens of victim accounts just look like isolated cases of bad financial management.
Right. But with it, the AI machine learning models analyze the historical data, spot the deviations from normal human behavior, and expose the entire architectural structure of the syndicate.
And it tracks them even when they try to hide in the crypto world, right? We mentioned cryptocurrency earlier as a way traffickers try to sever the link, but, crypto isn't a magical, invisible realm.
It really isn't. Crypto still has to obey the laws of physics in the real world. I mean, a trafficker cannot pay the physical lease for an illicit massage parlor in Bitcoin.
Right. The landlord wants dollars.
Exactly. They cannot buy a fleet of transport vans in Ethereum. Eventually, that cryptocurrency has to interface with the fiat banking system. It has to go through an off-ramp to be converted into US dollars or euros.
So the AI is basically sitting at the exit gates.
It is sitting right at the conversion point. When the crypto hits a real-world exchange to become cash, it leaves a digital footprint. The AI is designed to track those complex money laundering typologies, matching the blockchain wallet history to the real-world bank account receiving the funds. It cares about the pattern and origin of the money movement, stripping away the illusion of crypto anonymity.
Okay, let's walk through the timeline of an actual takedown. The AI machine learning model spots the anomalies at 3 in the morning. The digital red string connects the victim's phone number to the central node trafficker's IP address.
Okay.
The banks investigators map the entire network. What happens next? A bank compliance officer can't exactly strap on a bulletproof vest and raid an illicit labor camp.
No, they certainly can't.
How does a flagged bank account translate into a physical rescue for a victim?
The bridge between the bank's server farm and the physical rescue is a document called a SAR, a suspicious activity report.
I saw. Okay.
When financial institutions identify these high-confidence patterns, they are legally required to file SARs with regulatory bodies like FinCEN.
But a SAR isn't just a generic complaint box where a bank says, hey, this looks weird, right? It has to be actionable intelligence.
Oh, it is the most vital financial intelligence law enforcement can get. A well-written SAR provides detectives with the exact roadmap they need.
Like giving them the cheat codes.
Exactly. It gives them the IP addresses, the linked account numbers, the corporate shell company structures, and the transaction histories. Often, local law enforcement might just be investigating a low-level local vice crime.
And they have no idea it connects to a global syndicate.
Right. A single SAR from a bank, combined with another SAR from a different institution in a different state, acts as the missing puzzle piece that elevates a local arrest into a massive transnational federal case.
Which really highlights why human staff training remains so crucial, even with the most advanced AI in the world.
Absolutely.
The human analysts have to know how to interpret the AI's alerts, filter out the noise, and synthesize those red flags into a detailed, comprehensive SAR that a detective can actually use.
Yes, technology identifies the mathematical pattern, but humans provide the narrative context. And, the collaboration goes far beyond just filing reports to a government black box.
Oh, really? Who else is involved?
Information sharing is the lifeblood of this fight. Banks actively collaborate with regulators, they brief law enforcement, and crucially, they work with non-governmental organizations.
Oh, like the source specifically points out the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Yes, organizations like the hotline rely heavily on the financial intelligence gathered by these institutions.
What do they do with that data?
The data helps them identify suspected trafficking hotspots, understand new operational tactics, and coordinate physical support for the victims once the networks are actually disrupted. It requires a massive, deeply collaborative ecosystem.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because let's be honest, as a consumer, it is incredibly easy to get annoyed by bank bureaucracy.
Oh, sure. We've all been there.
You try to wire money to a friend for concert tickets, and the app makes you answer 3 security questions. Identify a crosswalk in a blurry photo, type in your first pet's name, and wait 24 hours.
It can be frustrating.
You try to use your debit card on vacation, and you get locked out while standing in line for a coffee. It feels like an agonizing amount of friction.
Right.
But are those very protocols, that intense annoyance, in the actual safety net catching these operations?
This raises an important question about how we as a society balance extreme convenience with security.
Right.
Yes, that friction you experience is entirely essential. The exact same algorithms that temporarily pause your account because you bought a coffee in a different state are the algorithms being relentlessly trained to look for the rapid velocity and sinister patterns of trafficking funds.
That's a powerful way to look at it.
It comes back to a core belief I hold. Knowledge is most valuable when it's actively applied. All this financial intelligence, the machine learning, the link analysis, It isn't just about banks maintaining their compliance or avoiding hefty regulatory fines.
It's way bigger than that.
When applied correctly, that friction is the ultimate tool to dismantle modern slavery.
It really changes how you look at the mundane act of banking. We started this deep dive talking about shifting your perspective, moving away from the physical borders and gritty action movies and stepping into the shadow economy.
And looking at the reality of the data.
Right. We've seen how traffickers treat the financial system as a strict necessity, using structured deposits, smurfing, and front businesses to hide illicit cash in plain sight.
We've explored the victim side of the ledger, too, where forced criminality and the rapid velocity of immediate withdrawals leave a digital footprint of profound coercion and a total lack of autonomy.
We decoded the red flags, from the teller noticing a controlling partner hovering in the lobby to the massive AI knowledge graphs connecting invisible IP addresses at 3 in the morning.
It's an incredible web.
And we've seen how a single suspicious activity report can be the vital domino that provides law enforcement with the map to take down an entire network. Looking at the money completely changes our understanding of human trafficking.
It proves that the front lines of this fight aren't just happening in the shadows. They're happening right in the open, buried inside the massive data streams of our global economy.
I want to leave you with a final thought today, something we haven't touched on yet, but something to really ponder as this technology evolves. Consider what happens in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
As banks deploy this incredibly advanced AI and link analysis to catch these networks, the traffickers are not going to just give up. They're inevitably going to start using generative AI of their own.
That's a terrifying prospect.
We are looking at a looming algorithmic arms race where criminal syndicates use large language models to generate thousands of perfectly credible synthetic identities, and they'll deploy automated bots to create randomized, seemingly human transaction patterns designed specifically to defeat the bank's machine learning models.
The tech goes both ways.
Exactly. The next frontier in human trafficking won't be fought with cash at a teller window. It will be an invisible war of algorithms, with AI fighting AI for the lives of the most vulnerable people on Earth.
Wow.
So the next time you curse your banking app for making you do a 2-factor authentication, remember what that system is actually built to do.
Yeah, take a breath.
The exact same algorithms protecting your checking account from a fraudulent charge might, at that very moment, be quietly identifying a hidden criminal network. They might be tracing a digital red string, working in the background to rescue a victim trapped in the shadows right alongside us.
You've been listening to What the F Happened? Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast by DataVisor. If you want to keep learning between episodes, check out Defend Training, a set of self-paced online courses for fraud and financial crime professionals, practical and built around real-world scenarios.
And you can earn CPE credits through the ACFE San Francisco Bay Area chapter. You can find it at datavisor.com/defendtraining. The link's in the description.
This episode's audio was generated using Google's Notebook LM, based on expert analysis and trusted sources. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.